Well, we mentioned, or I kind of casually threw out there Wikipedia and Google Scholar, and I recognize that these are not tools for like sophisticated data science or like deep research. But I also know that the folks listening tonight are not data scientists; they're not research scientists. So I wanted to ask if you had any particular resources or recommendations or just strategies that people can utilize if they do want to maybe scratch the surface a little bit on something their therapist said or on some sort of like particular therapeutic modality or practice or exercise or whatever the hell.
Yeah, I mean, YouTube and even TikTok, right? So much of um, there's a lot of good information out there, right? But there's a lot of bad information out there. So I think use discernment or maybe check things with primary sources. Um, but I appreciate a culture that's more willing to talk about psychological practices, therapeutic terms and modalities. I think more of this should be discussed and talked about, and certainly validated or checked for accuracy. But I appreciate that more people are talking about mental health, right, and the ways that it can be impacted. I also want to shout out one of my favorite podcasts. It's actually called Very Bad Therapy, and it's two therapists who interview a client about their bad therapy and then discuss, sometimes with another therapist, why it was bad therapy and how it could have been good therapy. And I think that's a great way, right? It's kind of fun and gossipy, right, to hear about someone else's experience. But also I appreciate that they talk about how could this be good therapy, or what should good therapy look like when discussing certain aspects. So I think more information is always entertaining but useful.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. With that thought in mind, are there any final words that you want to make sure to leave the audience with tonight? Any last impressions that you want to put on everybody's mind as we walk out the door?
Yeah, I guess I don't know if this is an appropriate time to just talk about some of the resources for finding a therapist, right? These are kind of specific to the United States. So if you're in another place, things might look very different for you. But a few organizations and websites that are reliable. The first is seculartherapy.org, right? So that's for people who have declared that they are not going to use religion in their treatment and that their work is grounded in something else. And I think that's a great place to start for this community. The second is inclusivetherapist.com. So I love that there's more and more queer, trans, people of color leading in this field. And if you're looking for someone who's a therapist who maybe shares an experience you have or shares an expertise that you're interested in learning more about, there's great people who are posting on the Inclusive Therapist Directory. Another one is reclamationcollective.com, which is specifically for religious trauma. And they have support groups and a therapist directory with people who are specializing and working together to support people with harmful religious experiences or religious transitions. And the last is about affordable therapy. Again, I know we mentioned insurance coverage and how that can be a challenge in therapy. But there's a place that's called openpathcollective.org. And that's a place where therapists offer lower cost sessions to people. And you can sort, in a variety of ways, find someone in your area or who's licensed in your place that you're interested in receiving therapy in some of the specialties that you have.
Yeah. Well, and I'll go ahead and remind the audience that you can find links to all of those things in the show notes to this episode. And then finally, Emily, you had mentioned to me that you were working on a purity culture recovery group. And I just wanted to give you a quick opportunity to walk people through what that actually means, what that could look like.
Absolutely. So I know we talked a little bit about groups earlier and some of the challenges with them, but I'm actually working on bringing together a group of people right now who are specifically interested in working through purity culture recovery and the relational and emotional impacts of that
Hmm.
where, even if you've left religion behind, the impacts of purity culture can still sit with you and still affect you in ways that you feel like are limiting. So unfortunately, it's only for people who are located in California. But if that's you and you come across this podcast or this show, or in the Discord or any of the other resources, reach out. I'll have some information posted, and our group starts February 1st. And it's going to be virtual. So if you're in California and you're interested in working on purity culture recovery with a therapist and in a community setting where you get to have that peer support as well as some psychoeducation, there's a link that hopefully you can find and potentially join our group or share it with somebody who needs it.
Fantastic. And it looks like there's some really good there was really good references up there for where people can find you. But is there anywhere else that you want to direct people for where they can find you?
I'm on Instagram, and my Instagram is on there, and I try to post obviously free content that would support people who are thinking about religious recovery and trying to live lives, outside of the harmful aspects that religion can bring.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much for joining us. It has been a really, really good conversation. And I think we got into some really meaty topics.